The Simucube throttle has one job and one purpose: look good next to the Simucube active pedal. That's not an easy task alongside this highly chiseled obsidian unit, but Simucube's throttle looks right at home. This is a dedicated accessory that only works with the active pedal, and at around 300 quid it can come across as a high price considering its focused role. This is a product that is only of interest to those shopping for the active pedal. I do recognise the irony of saying that it's a little pricey when the £1,500 active pedal is sitting only inches away from it. That's like moaning about the price of a car wash as I pull up in a Bentley. Nonetheless, it's actually surprisingly high quality with pretty much all the usual adjustment options packaged in Simucube's very attractive finish. So much so that it did leave me wondering why Simucube never bothered making a full traditional pedal set. Although it has imperfections, if this is anything to go by, I think that they've done pretty well. Although it stands quite literally in the active pedal shadow, it complements it very well, performs great, and is a handsome pedal in its own right, ensuring that it will keep the aesthetics level high on your rig. Allow me to show you. Thanks to Simucube for their support by providing the passive throttle as part of an active pedal setup that I just reviewed, but keep in mind this is a review and not an ad. I will show you good and bad points, of which even this does have some. Should you proceed to buy an active pedal setup, shop links are available in the video description. Check them out for more information. The throttle is designed in Finland, but unlike the active pedal, which is manufactured in Estonia, this is made in China. Inside you'll get the pedal, a box of bolts and bits, and some extra springs which you can swap in to change the throttle resistance. The pedal itself is really good to look at. The design gives off the impression that it's been chipped from a block of granite, and the presence of a dash of anodized orange sets it all off nicely. It fits Simucube's design perfectly. Even if there were no logos on this, you'd be able to tell it was them. It mounts like most other high-end pedals, with a spread of bolts into a platform of your choosing. Here you see it attached to the Simucube pedal plate. It connects directly to the rear of the active pedal and is detected by Simucube's tuner software as a passive pedal, which you can assign to the role of throttle or the role of clutch and brake too, as it happens, if you really want, though it's not really equipped for it. You can adjust the pedal's progression curve to your liking, which can be very useful for specialising in certain powerful cars, something not to be overlooked, but the majority of adjustment options remain physical. Simucube has put some effort into allowing you to change the major characteristics of this quickly and without the use of tools. The main spring, of which Simucube supplies 3 different grades, can be swapped by undoing the end cap and sliding the through rod out, though Simucube stresses that you must not allow the throttle to fold inwards during this process, and you must not allow this spring to fly off and get lost. Your throttle will not work without this spring. Yep, you heard me right. More on that later on. Throttle preload is managed by this hand-tightened collar, which adjusts the attitude of the pedal at the start of its travel and throughout the whole pedal. Throttle travel can also be adjusted using the orange wheel. This extends or retracts the end stop, which you can see moving slowly here. Between these 3 variables, you can pretty much change the entire character of your throttle pedal in a couple of minutes with no tools, just your hands. Sure, the active pedal could achieve all of this in 10 seconds, but as far as traditional pedals go, adjustment is really quick here. If you do want to crack out the Allen keys, then you can do a lot more. The entire pedal can be pivoted across several indentations, which also help to guarantee the throttle will stay set in position, no creeping or sliding over time. The general force curve can be changed by adjusting the anchor point of a mainspring assembly, which can further raise or lower the mechanical resistance of the springs to add range to what's possible. The pedal face can be height and angle adjusted, and a rubber pad is also included if you want a high-tack feeling, though I would personally have to be held under duress to willingly cover up the lovely logo engraved on that faceplate. For most adjustments, the manual shows you how to achieve certain results, which is very helpful to see, and overall this is a broadly adjustable throttle, most of which quick and easy to do, and I really can't think of any blind spots in this regard. So the next question, does it act as good as it looks? Long story short, yes. I find it to be well up to par and a very appropriate pairing to the active pedal. It feels like a fully developed pedal that has somehow been separated from a high quality traditional pedal set somehow, like it wandered off from a Simucube brake and clutch pedal somewhere and couldn't find its way back, so it just latched onto the active pedal instead. The biggest question anyone will have about this is If I choose this passive throttle instead of another active pedal, will I regret it? Will I feel like I've cheaped out? Will it seem totally flimsy and outclassed next to the active pedal that I did buy? And the answer is definitely not. It does a fine job and I've enjoyed using it very much. And whilst it's not quite at the level of mechanical smoothness and lightness as the VRS throttle pedal, it's a lot more stylish. Due to its relatively quick and easy adjustability, I have very little practical criticism of it. You should have no regrets opting for the passive throttle for that task, especially if you're looking to just be efficient with your money, which is what this is designed to do when placed in an active pedal setup. There are a couple of things to know, maybe not negatives, more observations that buyers might like to know. Whilst very smooth and lovely overall across its whole travel, it does suffer from the same thing that almost all through rod throttles do, and that's mild stickiness. The rod that passes through the support causes very mild friction, which can make micro adjustments a little bit less smooth than they could be. You'll be able to feel this happening when you sit in your rig and try to make really slow changes in movement to the throttle pedal. You'll feel a tiny initial step as your foot overcomes that stickiness and the rod moves, but in reality it makes hardly any impact on practical results and it still feels very, very smooth overall. It's simply imperceptible to any normal person when actually racing. This is just me really putting things under the microscope here. In terms of noise, it's not the quietest throttle out there. Throttle pedals do all have to deal with one problem in particular, and that's the lift-off bump, where the pedal goes from 100% to 0% pressure in a split second and crashes on the end stop. Simucube have tried to mitigate this with a rubber bumper on the throttle rod end cap, but it will still impart a fair thud on release. Many throttle pedals suffer with this, but this is amongst the louder ones that I've used. I can hear a tapping noise when watching my live streams back with this, whereas I don't usually hear that. Another thing I did notice was a creaky spring, as you can hear in this clip. Under further investigation, that creaking wasn't coming from the mainspring as I initially thought, it was actually coming from this one. This is a very, very important spring. This throttle pedal uses a load cell, but it doesn't measure the load going through the mainspring. It actually measures this tiny one here. That creaking you can hear in the clip was actually deflecting the throttle percentage detection every time it creaked, because that creak is caused by the spring releasing tension. It was only a tiny amount, like a couple of percent, but it was happening. I reseated this spring whilst I was changing the mainspring, and that creaking disappeared, and those dips in the throttle detection disappeared also. So if you receive your passive throttle and you notice the same thing, you might actually have the same issue secretly taking place. And I'm putting this down to a mild quality control issue. I've been using this pedal for a month and never noticed that it was doing it. It never had any practical impact, so for all intents and purposes, it was never actually a problem other than the creaking, but it did highlight something that I don't like. I'm not going to delve or speculate as to why Simucube chose this method of throttle detection. They're the industry experts, not me, so I'm sure they weighed up all the options, and there's a very good reason they didn't just go with a magnetic sensor, for example, to do this job. But on a personal level, I kind of wish that I didn't know that the entire throttle relies solely on this tiny little spring in this tiny little compartment behaving consistently and properly. Ignorance was bliss here. So what are the alternatives to Simucube's passive throttle? What could you use instead of it? Well, you can use hoisting valve pedals directly with an active pedal if you add some adapters. They are officially supported. As you can see here though, I tested my VRS pedals side by side, and although they work great, they do stick out like a sore thumb due to the colour mismatch. This is something you'd do if you were adding an active pedal to your existing setup and just slotting them in between the pedals you already have. But if you're starting from scratch, it does make a lot more sense just to use Simucube's passive pedal. That is really the whole point of the passive throttle. It looks absolutely superb standing next to the active pedal and is made to a high enough standard that it doesn't just feel like an afterthought. It's a very competent thing all by itself. It looks great, and it only proves that Simucube would also be capable of a pretty decent traditional pedal set if they ever decided to do so. And that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope this was informative, entertaining. If you haven't already seen my active pedal review, then you can see it on screen now and linked in the description. You'll also find purchase links down there too, so don't forget to check them out. Cheers!